Hello, you wonderful people. So for today's video, I'm going to talk about the official trailer that came out for She-Hulk with the subtitle Attorney at Law, which I thought was kind of neat. If you haven't seen it already, I'll include a link to it in the description down below. But I wasn't quite sure what to fully expect from the She-Hulk show. I remember a little while back they had talked about it kind of being almost like this comedy drama. I guess it's going to be more like a comedy courtroom drama. Maybe like kind of Boston Legal-ish. Just from a little bit I've ever seen of Boston Legal. But maybe something of that element, just with superheroes involved. I definitely get the feeling like it might be something WandaVision-esque, more sitcom element of WandaVision. I mean, not the sitcom, but you know, that feel and that tone maybe, and not maybe the more darker, mysterious elements. Obviously, this is my first introduction to this character, so I know next to nothing, except for the little bit I picked up here and there about people talking about who she is. Obviously, that she's Bruce Banner's cousin. There is a car crash we do see in this, so I'm wondering, is that a car crash that she's involved in, and eventually Bruce has to give her his blood transfusion, because they're probably the only family they have, so that was kind of probably all they can do. Because we do see that Bruce is Professor Hulk, so I figured that'd be kind of an issue that he'd be reluctant to do that. That's why I'm wondering what the time frame of the story is, because I'm wondering if that whole thing happened a while ago, but it's only more recently that her hulking side has started popping up, or is it pretty quickly after the transfusion that this happened? I'm curious, because we're not really clear. I mean, with the fact is we get Professor Hulk and we also have Abomination in it, it would assume, you can assume that this takes place obviously post Endgame but pre Shang-Chi. Considering the fact is Bruce was Bruce Banner in that, and Abomination was taken by Wong. Not less this is Wong arresting him, but like Wong, after fighting him, took him. But that seemed like that's its own, like that's something else. So maybe Abomination escapes in this show and then eventually goes off to Shang-Chi and ends up getting beat by Wong and taken away somewhere, because it doesn't seem like Bruce can control the whole being, now that he's stuck as Professor Hulk. I haven't seen Endgame since it originally was in theaters, so I don't know. I don't remember if they really covered that, but I think he is kind of stuck that way, you know. So the fact is he does eventually become just Bruce Banner again. Maybe we'll kind of get hints to that over the course of this show. And I think that'd be an interesting parallel with Jennifer getting more control over her Hulk situation, and the fact is that she's kind of going to deal with the duality of it, whereas Bruce kind of goes back to being human. Now, what that means for the Hulk side of himself, we'll have to wait and see. But that is going to be an interesting thing, and I'm curious how Bruce is going to feel about that her situation is a little more controllable, because she seems to still be herself even when she hulks out, whereas he kind of becomes like a whole completely other different personality and being an entity. So it's going to be interesting to see how Bruce feels about that, but I do like him kind of pushing her through her paces to try and get her to get control over her powers. But obviously it seems like this is still all, I mean, once again, it just depends on the time frame of the show, like how things play out, because like I said, it might be an origin story, or we get hints of an origin story in the beginning and then we just go straight to present day. It just depends on how they end up structuring it. But like, the fact is that she's going to be representing superheroes. We see in the trailer it's when she gets that job, so I don't know if that's kind of implying that she's stuck representing Abomination, because I think the last time you see him in the Incredible Hulk movie, he was stuck as Abomination, wasn't he? He didn't go back to being whatever Tim Roth's character's name was, right? I could be mistaken, because obviously once again, when we saw him in Shang-Chi, he was just full-blown Abomination. He never went back human, but you know, we'll ultimately have to wait and see. Could we see him turn into Abomination in this? This almost feels like this is going to be like another like weird kind of show in the MCU, just because the fact is that, you know, she's kind of blowing up as She-Hulk, but she's kind of keeping that secret identity situation going on. And the fact is, like, well, I guess it makes sense because Hulk is kind of a celebrity now, like, especially we got an Endgame, like him taking photos and like giving autographs. So it seems like She-Hulk is getting kind of that same treatment, and so she's kind of a bit of celebrity, and just seeing her hanging out with people, and just, it's one of those weird things you never really got to see. I mean, you got to see it in Endgame, so I like that they're leaning into it more about like, oh, you see like one of the Hulks just like out and about, just like casually living life, like hanging out with friends, drinking. I'm assuming her friends know, but I like I said the duality of it, but I'm not 100% sure if the world knows that Jennifer and She-Hulk are the same thing, because they show up at her house. It's like, oh, is She-Hulk there? So I don't, maybe they do know, because she's like, I just want to be a regular lawyer, but it's like, yeah, kind of past that point. But we even see, even in the trailer, like there's going to be like a brawl like in one of the courtroom scenes, so that's just going to be interesting. It just feels like it's just going to be kind of a little wacky and fun, and it's so interesting because obviously we haven't had like this is different, but it's like we haven't had like a solo Hulk project. A Hulk has always been accompanied by some. Once again, that's just because of the whole like Universal angle of it. They can't make us Hulk movie, solo Hulk movie. Who knows if people really want them to, but like having a Hulk character kind of stand on her own, interestingly enough, is going to be interesting because I think this is the first time we'll get that in the MCU in this regard. Because her circumstances don't seem nearly, because Bruce is the whole tortured person, but to be fair, when he transformed, he could never control it. Jennifer, maybe, it seems like there might be some issues there maybe at the beginning, especially like when, I mean, that could just be her pissed at, because it seems like she's about to bust out of the container and attack Bruce, but that's probably not like, oh, I'm losing control of my powers. It's like, no, you put me in a situation to trigger my powers, sure, but I could have died, you're a dick. To be fair, Bruce also knows, like, he kind of can't die. He's talked about that before, but we don't know if the same applies to Jennifer because her circumstances are different. Obviously, it's going to be interesting to kind of get like a very law, in like a law element to this show. There is talks. Obviously, we got Matt Murdock, played by Charlie Cox, in this in the MCU because of No Way Home. So we know he exists in this continuity, so I'm curious if we're going to get any Matt Murdock and her facing off against each other. She's a defense attorney and so is Matt, but not unless it just, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Or they might not butt heads necessarily, but I think they do butt heads in the comics from what I've heard. I don't know what, maybe they'll be on opposing sides, like a one episode off thing or something. I'd also heard this a while back, and I don't know how true it is, that there was talks about Jessica Jones popping up, specifically Kristen Ritter's Jessica Jones from the Netflix stuff, well, now Disney Plus stuff, but it's going to be interesting to see whether that ends up being the case. But I am curious, like, what other people is she representing? It would be interesting if she was representing a Jessica Jones. Would it just be like a quick cameo, or just like clients that she's potentially taking on? And just, I don't know, like, obviously we got a little small peek into this world. Obviously, like, circling back a little bit to the whole living an everyday life. The fact is that, like, oh, she's going on dates. And it makes you wonder, it's like, that feels kind of weird because it feels like that's someone's kink of like, oh, big strong green lady pick me up, it's like, oh, I don't know, I was like, that seems so weird because we've never seen Bruce deal with that necessarily. I mean, so it's kind of, it feels a little weird, but I'm here for it to see like what that's all about. And whether I'm curious if she kind of ever finds herself in a situation where people kind of fetishize her. I'm butchering that word, like there's kind of a fetish there is what I'm trying to say. So I'm curious, is that something they're going to kind of tackle or whatever? It's like, oh, do you like me for me, or you just like me because you're like, oh, I'm kind of a super being, and that's kind of where you get your rocks off. I don't know. I'm curious to see how they end up tackling that and just kind of like the weirdness I think is going to be associated with it. But I'm very excited for the show. Obviously, these are just some of the things kind of going through my mind. I'd love to get to know your thoughts in the comments down below. What do you think? What do you expect? What do you want from the show? Let me know all your thoughts. Really, that's all I want to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.